like that and make sure it's on.
Is this working?
Yes. So just while we're on the subject, you actually told me another scary story, which was about climbing in Patagonia, but the scary part was not the climb, it was the return. You want to tell us that story?
Yeah, though actually, did you frame it as the scariest thing you've ever done?
I think I did. I think you might have taken the liberty by saying the most horrific travel experience that you've ever had.
Yeah, but I feel like you framed it had to be, there were parameters to it. It wasn't just like the scariest thing you've ever done.
It was definitely my fault.
The travel story was pretty crazy. I showed up like 4 days late for a thing. I was like stuck in transit in Russia for days. Actually, I guess we drank out of streams and stuff. But yeah, 20 hours of walking and no food. I was like,
Yes.
oh, that's a good time.
Because it was a storm. Because the idea was that there was a storm, right? Like
Yeah.
you couldn't come back down the way that you'd gone up.
Yeah, basically it would have been too dangerous to rappel down the side of the mountain range that we came from, because that was like a rock wall, and it was so windy that the rope would have wrapped around the mountain and got stuck, and then we would have been stuck, and then we probably would die. And so instead we rappelled the other side, which was like an ice wall, and so then we wound up on the southern ice cap, which is as extreme as it sounds. It's one of the biggest extremes in the world. And then we walked all the way back around the mountain range, which is quite far.
Yeah, and the most dangerous part being that you didn't have the food and water to survive that long.
Well, we didn't have any camping stuff. We didn't have any food. We just had climbing gear and boots, and we just walked for a day.
And that, I think,
But it's funny because it's not like you're just going to sit down and die. It's like obviously you're going to walk back to town. So, it really sucks, but build some character. You just walk.
yeah. Or you could have done it.
Wound up being a 54-hour push, which is pretty long.
Yes.
Like 54 hours exercise with 1 day's worth of food. So,
I literally don't think I've ever done anything for 54 hours.
but if your life depended on it, you would.
This is true. I would do it. There's very little in the movie. Well, there's some in the movie about your childhood. You describe yourself as a dark soul. You describe yourself being into collecting Legos. And you said, you talk about being into Legos and computer games. And then later in the movie, you mention, you were really into climbing trees and you climbed up on your high school roof. But there's very little about what happened in between. Like, what was the moment where you kind of went, I like climbing on trees and going up roofs and not playing video games anymore?
Well, I think there wasn't in between. I just always loved climbing on trees. It wasn't like I started. It was from childhood. I always loved climbing on things and climbing buildings and brick walls and whatever, scrambling on things. And then that eventually translated to the climbing gym, which is when a gym in Sacramento opened. Basically, when the gym opened, I just transferred that love of climbing indoors.
Do you remember like the moment where you were like, I like this. This is the best thing ever?
No, but I just always did. I always loved it.
Though
actually, may I just say that this is the first event that we've done for Free Solo in a gym, and it makes me so happy to see everyone on pads. And I would say that typically I would, dress up a little bit for an event and show some respect, but I was like, oh, I'm bouldering, and then we're hanging out, and I was like, you know what, we're gonna climb after, let's just keep it casual. So this is officially the first and probably last Free Solo event I've done barefoot.
And the visual is priceless up here.
I know, well, you're gonna climb after it.
Oh yeah, for sure. These shoes are perfect for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's flash forward to many, many years later, and you're going to ascend El Cap. Throughout the movie, you were given a million reasons why it would be a better idea not to film this. From having cameras around that could distract you, to just feeling like you had to push on when you maybe felt like you shouldn't. Why did you ultimately decide to let them make a movie about this?
Well, part of it's just that we're so far down the path, we'd all spent 2 years working together on it. I don't know, but for some of the reasons that you're saying why you should make a film, there are also tons of reasons why I should make a film, because it actually was quite helpful to have people around for some of the logistics to help me carry Roast Summit to do all their preparation for the rappelling and the practicing.
You're saying you decided to make a movie about this so that you could get some free help?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Honestly, for those that know climbing films, a long time ago I did a little short for the North Face about soling Sendero Luminoso that's route in Mexico. It's like a really good little YouTube video. I did that video specifically because I needed a partner and nobody was willing to climb with me. So I was like, oh, well, if my friend Cedar does it with me, he can get paid to make a video, and then he's happy to work with me on it for a week, and so then I can actually do my project. But basically, there was no easy way for me to work on it by myself, and so I kind of needed somebody, and I was like, oh, at least this way my buddy gets paid. That said, it makes total sense to sort of harness, media projects to your own goals. Like I'd always wanted free solo El Cap, and I kind of knew that it was a little too big to do totally by myself. And I mean, the whole point of working on solo projects by yourself is to maintain some privacy, to like keep it in isolation, not have any extra pressure. I like to keep it discreet. But the thing with El Cap is that I knew it wasn't going to be that discreet anyway, because it was going to take me too much time going up there. Like all my friends were going to know anyway, because I'd spent a whole season working on the same thing. So I was like, oh, if I can't keep it secret, I may as well get some help.
When you were talking about the movie, what did you talk about as far as what you wanted it to be and what you didn't want it to be?
I just trusted their vision. And obviously, obviously well-founded, because they did a good job. but no, I mean, from the beginning, Jimmy Chai, they approached me, the co-directors, Jimmy Chin and Shai Vatsalli, they approached me on making a film, and, I think that the ideal is to only work with people you trust, and then if you trust them, just let them do their thing.
I wish everybody in Hollywood would do that.
Well, I mean, I was particularly chill about that stuff. I'm like, I don't care. I didn't even see the film until it was final. I saw the final draft of the film. They showed me, and I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. And then, that's pretty good.
Well, this brings up a question I was going to ask you later, but obviously your relationship with your girlfriend plays a huge role in the movie. It's a whole subplot. Were you aware, first of all, were you dating at the time that you started shooting the film?
No, so we hadn't started dating when we started shooting the film, but it was all sort of close, the timing was close. And then we dated throughout the whole process, and I mean, obviously I knew that they were filming all this time with us together, but you just don't know what's going to be in the film. I mean, they also filmed me going to the DMV and doing all this crazy normal life stuff, and I didn't make it in the movie. So,
I can tell you why that happened.
but so, they were filming with me all the time for 2 years, and you don't really know what's going to make the cut or not. Though it's not surprising that the personal relationships would make it, because obviously we had so many heavy conversations and things that enriched the film. But I mean, if it was me, I would have just showed 3 hours of uncut footage of climbing El Cap, and like, this is obviously they have a different vision for what makes a good film.
When you saw the final cut, like you and Sonny, what did you think of the fact that there is so much of your relationship?
I was sort of like, I would have cut it all, but we reach, we're just like, oh yeah, there's a lot there.
Because you had some very intense conversations with the cameras on you. There was no thought of the fact that this was being recorded while it was happening.
No, I'm sure there was, but at a certain point you're just comfortable with the crew. I mean, it all sort of feels like family. It's like your friends hanging out in the van with you, same guys. I mean, so think it's a 90-minute film, and I think they've said that we shot something like 700 or 800 hours of footage. And then beyond that, I hung out with them. Like, that's the footage they were recording. For every hour that they shot in the van, they were also just hanging out, chit-chatting, eating dinner with me, training on the hangboard. A bunch of the camera guys are also elite climbers, so they're all, rotating in and training, doing the whole thing. I mean, we're together all the time. And so, for every difficult conversation in the film, think how many other difficult conversations weren't in the film, but, with the same people in the same context. It's like, obviously they're heavy ideas that you have to work through. It's like, are you going to die? Is it worth it?
Well, let's see an example thereof, actually. This is a scene before you're actually doing the ascent, but you're in training with another just unbelievable climber, Tommy Caldwell. Let's play this clip.
I've been obsessed with El Cap for years. El Capitan is unbelievably huge, kind of unfathomably huge.
You were telling me before anybody even showed up, you were climbing one of these walls. And afterwards, I was like, well, that's a lot easier than El Cap. And you said,
I said, in fact, it's not. I mean, yeah. Well, actually, how many of you guys climb? Who's climbing afterward? Oh, yeah, cool. So, I mean, you guys know that I mean, the hardest problems in the gym are much harder than anything on El Cap. I mean, the technical grade of what I climbed on El Cap is maybe 13A, maybe B7-ish, which is sort of, moderate, difficult gym climbing, but definitely not as hard as the hardest things in the gym. But that said, the style is way more insecure, it's way more technical, it's it's much smaller footholds, it's way more slippery, and obviously it's 3,000 feet high. But, so I mean, there are differences, but when you distill it down to just the physical challenge of it, I mean, technically, a lot of the stuff in the gym is way harder. And, I basically just rapid fired half the problems in the gym in the last hour and fell off half of them. It was like, oh yeah, I feel pretty worked. I mean, you can definitely simulate an El Cap experience by just climbing every single thing in the gym really fast.
There you go, it's just that easy, everybody. I mean, clearly what that says to me is that this is largely a trick of the mind. The thing that sets you apart is that you're able to make yourself do it at 3,000 feet without a rope. And in the movie, has everybody seen the movie, by the way? Okay, yes, probably multiple times. There's this amazing scene, of course, where a medical team figures out that there's actually something physically different about your brain.
Well, that's actually not exactly the conclusion.
Okay.
And it's funny because that's what everybody takes from the scene in the film. But if you, so that was all, there was an article for Nautilus magazine, so basically a writer approached me about doing that fMRI and getting the brain scan and all that, and then the film crew tagged along since I was doing this whole article anyway. And so in the little clip in the film, but basically the takeaway wasn't so much that there's anything different about my brain because it's all there and it all works. But basically, I swear it's all there. But the takeaway was more that with enough practice, I sort of desensitized myself to that level of stimulus.
Oh.
So like in the fMRI, I wasn't registering anything because I'm looking at black and white photos and I'm like, obviously I'm safe. Like my brain shouldn't be registering fear. But
so is that, do you think what sets you apart from other climbers is that you've just like been able to do that to your brain? Like,
well, so I know that there's been change over time. I mean, I know that things that used to be really scary for me aren't anymore. So obviously there has been change with practice. And so I just think that, perhaps my baseline was a little bit higher than average to begin with, but definitely with 10 or 15 years of just nonstop exposure to really scary situations, I just, less sensitive to it now.
does that bleed over into other things in your life? Like, are you a thrill seeker in any other area of your life? Do you go on like roller coasters, or like, are you a horror movie buff? Or
No, I hate horror movies. I think it's stupid. Well, I mean, yeah, I kind of do. No. I mean, actually, well, I kind of take issue with thrill seeker because I mean, climbing isn't even really thrill seeking. It's just seeking out an experience and then trying to make it as unthrilling as possible. I mean, if anything, the whole film Free Solo is a 2-year process for me to make it unthrilling. Because had I done it on day one, it would have been horrifying. It would have been like a roller coaster scene where you're like, who knows what's going to happen? Except the thing is that a roller coaster, you know exactly what's going to happen. It's just designed to be safe. So that's kind of the thing is that I do really enjoy things like roller coasters because rationally that it's safe, so you can just enjoy the ride and be like, this is great. But if it's some like rickety old weird roadshow thing, then you're like, oh, maybe not, because it might actually crash. But
that's actually,
basically, there's a lot to unpack there in terms of risk and how you evaluate risk and what's actually scary and should it be scary. I mean, we can dive deeper into it if you want, but it's like there's just a lot there.
Yeah, well, I mean, actually, what I really want to know is then, is that the one thing that like elevates you and makes you able to do these things? Is that you're able to tell yourself that, or is it just the amount of training that you're doing?
I think it's the amount. I mean, if I had to distill everything down to one thing, which I think is hard to do, but I think that the one thing I would just say is that I've always freaking loved climbing so much that I'm willing to just hammer out the volume that allows you to prepare to the level that you need to.
It is true. Like when I showed up, you were climbing, and I'm like, oh, okay, he's climbing, and then you just kept climbing for like hours.
Until I had to stop taking pictures,
Would you ever, if you could, would you never stop?
If I physically could, I mean, yeah, maybe. I don't know. The problem is you break things down. You get tired. You get injured.
All right. I wanted to get to the morning of the climb. So, first of all, is there anything that you did differently that day than on any other big free solo?
No, I mean, the whole point was for that day to be exactly the same as normal. I pre-made my breakfast, I pre-packed my bag, I was wearing the same clothes as always. Basically the point was to have no choices that morning. Just wake up and just execute. And that was so much of the process of practicing the climb and working on everything, for the 2 years of rappelling down the wall and practicing, just to make sure that on the day I didn't have to think about anything, I could just climb.
You're wearing very simple clothes. It's like a red shirt, some pre-pants. Yes. What was there any thought at all? Is that what you wear every single
That's
time?
what I've been rehearsing in. I've been practicing in, and so you want to perform in what you're practicing.
There was no Lucky Charm.
No, I don't care about that stuff. No, the pants were actually the pants may have been the same pants from the whole Patagonia experience. Because I mean, it's kind of that's a whole random thing, but basically the pants that I showed up in the valley got destroyed throughout the season, and then I lost weight through the whole practicing because I was just doing so much exercise, so I needed pants with a built-in belt. And then I didn't really have any, and then those had these built-in gaiters, which is why those look so ghetto in the film, because I cut them off and I didn't have any scissors, so I cut them off with my kitchen knife.
They kind of dwell on it too.
Yeah, it's all a little scrappy. But yeah, but basically it was just like, oh, this is the only thing I have, and I'll cut the bottom off and then they're fine. but you need pants because you need to protect your legs for all the wide cuts because you're shoving your leg into the mountain. I don't know. It was all intentional. You know, I made choices the whole way.
All right, one thing that I know you didn't plan for, and I rewatched the movie last night, I'd forgotten about this. So you start climbing, and very quickly you come upon this dude who is on a portal edge. He must have been climbing the previous night. He camped out on the portal edge. And you, I guess, wake him up by showing up. And then he stands up and he's wearing a unicorn onesie.
That's fact.
So, tell me, first of all, what was the exchange between the two of you? What transpired?
So I actually didn't say anything to them. So in the film, if you see it, when I walk past them, they're still in the portal edge, so they were still like technically in bed, so you don't really want to disturb. And I didn't really want to talk to anybody anyway. I wasn't like, hey guys, let's chat. You know, I was like, so, you know, because they're still in bed, I felt like it was better just to discreetly walk past him. And then you see in the shot in the film, then he gets out of bed after I'm gone, and that's when you see that he's in a freaking onesie. But it's not unusual to pass parties on El Cap, and I'd actually passed 2 other parties of 3 below them. They were about 1,000 feet up, and then there were 2 other parties below them. And so I chatted with those guys a little bit as well.
What did you say to them? Hey, I'm about to do something.
No. You're just like, good morning, and they're like, good morning, and then you walk by. Actually, so the more interesting exchange was at the first party of 3 that I passed. They were on Mammoth Terrace, which is like at the top of the free blast. And as I was about to get to this big ledge system, I hear someone scream like, Alex, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh. Kind of spooked, like that's weird, because I didn't know there were any people at all. And then when I pop over the ledge, it turns out of the party of 3, one of them was named Alex, and they were yelling at each other about, you know, freedom. And so, you know, it's just, which is totally normal wall climbing experience, but it just feels a little surreal when you're like in the middle of this intense, you know.
It would have been terrible if it had freaked you out so muuld you'd fallen at that point.
It's easy to turn there. But also, if somebody yelling is enough for me to fall off, then I probably shouldn't be out there again. Because, I mean, there should be a margin of safety with, like, what if a bird comes out? What if it's a little wet? What if somebody screams at you? What if a rock falls by? You know, I mean, there are lots of, like, little things that should not make you fall off. Like, the margin shouldn't be that razor thin, basically.
Do you know that guy, by the way, the dude in the onesie?
No.
That was Star.
Gotta rethink what it's called.
Almost through it. Just did the karate kick. He's got it.
Ridiculous. So, like, the feeling of that moment for me, and I think for a lot of people in the theaters, is it's like, oh, he's got this, and now it's going to be easy, right? And what's going through your mind at that point? Because you've still got, for what for anybody else is like hours of incredibly difficult climbing.
Yeah, actually, so interestingly, so I also sort of like, oh, I'm in there, you know, like I did the hardest part, but from there to the summit is actually, it breaks down as, I don't know, basically a 10-pitch 12B, which is pretty much as hard as any other big free solo that I've ever done. Is it comparable to any of the other biggest solos I've done on granite? And so, you know, technically it's still quite hard from there to the top, but it is much easier than what I've just done, and I just felt great, you know, I was like, oh, I'm kind of in there.
How many times did you practice that? pitch?
Many times.
Do you have any idea? Dozens?
Yeah, dozens probably. Each time I repelled the wall, I would do it at least a few times. And I remember specifically one of the times I did 8 times in a row, just like rapid fire. And then, other days I'd do it a handful. I tried it every different way. I tried every variation of it. I tried different feet. I tried, different sequences. And then once I locked in that sequence, then I did it a bunch of times.
Were you like 100% successful with it? By the time
With that sequence, yeah, basically. Or I was kind of 100% successful when my shoes were tight and I was trying my hardest. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you rappel by and your shoes are all loose and you're wearing like cruiser shoes. Because, like if you're just commuting down the wall to work on something else, you're not always fully prepared to actually try your hardest. So, yeah, basically I wasn't batting 100% all the time, but when I was giving it full effort, I was doing it every time.
Still though, like, don't you want it to 100% of the time?
Well, it's just not like that, Some things are just hard.
Do you even understand, like, how crazy that seems to me?
Well, I mean, the thing is, a lot of that though is just internal sensations. Like, if you look at it and you know that you can do it when you try your hardest. Like, yeah, if you approach it casually, you're gonna fall off. But if you're bearing down and actually trying, you will do it each time.
All right, let's do one. Yeah, let's do the final thing. This is going to be the last one of the night. This is you finally reaching the top. It's over now.
Oh God, it's done. Oh my God, I can't believe what I just witnessed.
Good to see you again. So delighted. That felt so good. It's freaking rage.
Like a gigantic weight off of my shoulders.
So delighted.
So do you have anything more to add to Delighted when you watch that now?
Still delighted.
Do you revisit it every time you watch that?
Yeah, kind of. It
What
is,
does that feel like?
Oh yeah, no, it's awesome. Like that is. I mean, yeah, no, I just love. Yeah,
What?
it's great.
Tell me about the party that night.
I don't know if we really partied.
on.
One of the executive producers drove up from LA to Yosemite and he cooked a really nice dinner for everybody and we all hung out and decompressed, obviously.
That's the
But
most
actually,
disappointing thing
the real
I've
party
ever
the next morning, just by chance, the next morning was Sunday, and Sunday brunch at Iwani at the Classy Hotel in Yosemite is kind of like the nicest thing in Yosemite. And so we all went out to brunch and we all ate like 10 bajillion Nutella French toast things. After months of dieting and training, it was like, oh, Sunday brunch. That's really kind of party. But actually, in that day, Jimmy showed me the top-down, the boulder problem footage that we saw in the last clip, the top-down shot. He had it like on his iPhone, I think, or on his laptop or something. And so we all just saw the uncut, like, here's the whole boulder problem, and we're all just like, oh, like that's pretty young guy. Because none of us really, or at least, I certainly had no sense of what the film would become at that point. I had just done the climb, the next day you see some of the footage, and you're like, this is the most outrageous climbing footage ever. This is totally absurd. And then, sure enough, they made a really good movie.
It turns out.
Yeah.
Your mom, well actually you say at one point in the movie that one of the reasons that you're kind of driven to perform was that, like nothing was ever really good enough for your mom. Is it finally good enough? Like what is
Yeah,
your...
no, I think she's like, that's good. she's overly proud, for sure.
It's sad to say, but like all of us, you're gonna age. There will be a point where you won't be able to do this kind of climbing. What do you imagine you're gonna do?
I'll be right here, still trying the pink one,
Good? Is
Probably.
that-
I mean, I've always loved climbing. I love the motion of climbing. I mean, yeah, I might not be trying the world's hardest free solos, but I'll probably be out in the mountains hiking or traipsing about. Like, we'll see. Find new routes.
Going back though to Sunny, you say at one point in the movie, you're kind of like, yeah, I've never, climbing is always gonna beat out my lady. At least so far. This is before you met her.
I did say it so far.
Yes.
We'll
before
see.
you met
We'll
her.
see. Now it's getting neck and neck. But now we're 3 now. The thing is, a lot of the quotes in the film that sound particularly harsh like that are because we'd only been dating, 6 weeks or a few months. Whereas, I'd had this climbing dream for 10 years. And so clearly, a budding new relationship is nothing compared to a 10-year dream. But now after, 3.5, almost 4 years of like serious dating, you're sort of like, it's getting closer.
Last question: when you go and see, you still go to Yosemite, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I'll be there all season, climbing.
So when you see that mountain now, do you feel any differently about it?
Not that much, surprisingly. I mean, so after I did the free solo, the next summer, Tommy and I did the speed record on the nose. Basically, we climbed El Cap 15 times together to try to climb it in sub 2 hours, which actually will be in a different climbing film coming out later this fall. And it's funny because, the year before I had free soloed it, and yet you still look at it and you're like, it looks hard. It's just really big, it's kind of scary. It's just interesting because after years of preparation and training for this specific thing, on the day that I sold it, I could look at it and be like, that looks great. This is going to be a great experience. But right now, if I look up at El Cap, I'm like, that looks really big and really tiring, and there's no way I would want to sold that right now.
Would you ever do it again?
I mean, if I had some compelling reason, maybe. I mean, because it was an incredible experience. I mean, the climb felt great. I had a nice time doing it. But the thing is, I put, say at least 4 solid months of effort into that specific climb. So, it's hard to imagine why I would put 4 months of work into it again.
That's true. What are you putting 4 months of work into now?
I don't know. Tommy and I will probably put 2 months into a new route this season. Something on the right side that's harder. But that's like with the rope, it's all.
Is it a secret? Can you?
No, it's just to the left of the dawn wall, to the right of the nose. No.
And that's a hard, not free solo.
No. Tommy is a family man,
We've got a couple of mics if anybody wants to ask questions. And I'll bet you do. Oh man, there's so many. Let's start over here so it's a little easier for our mics to get to. Right there.
I might say one random thing before you get your mic. I mean, we were just whispering about it when the last clip showed,
right.
but the score, the film was scored by Marco Beltrami, who did an incredible job. And I don't really say about it. I mean, I love movie soundtracks in general. Like I kind of love scores, and I listen to them all the time when I fly and travel and things. And every time I watch it, it just does such a great job of sort of capturing the feel at the end of the climb. And I just watch it, I'm like, oh, it's pretty moving. You know, it's like Marco did a really good job.
It's remarkable. I actually wanted to ask you, do you ever listen to music while you climb, like when you're practicing? Obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
What are you listening to?
Like rock, like modern rock,
Really? Like stuff that
like drill or something. Yeah.
you don't have any?
Like, think like 2003 rock.
But nothing, like nothing soaring, nothing built.
No.
What do you think would happen?
Well, I listen to
slower.
stuff. Yeah, basically just slower. No, I've listened to soundtracks sometimes when I'm hiking into the mountains, things like that, when you want like a long, slow build, when it's going to be like a 6-hour hike and you're just sort of like put your headphones in and grind it out. But for soloing, it's a little more high energy, you know, you want something fired up.
The next time you do climb El Cap, that you should listen to the soundtrack of your own film.
It would really help with the pacing. I'm like, I'll probably make it the top by the. As soon as I hear the big sweeping overture, then you'll be like, go faster, oh god, this is my cue.
It's super meta.
Yeah.
All right, we have
Yeah,
this
Mike.
person right there.
Hello. So I just want to say, when we were watching you go through the boulder problem, I see you right there, but I'm still terrified that you're not gonna make it to the top. So my question is, did you have any mental preparations besides just constant practice before you did the El Cap that helped you kind of get into the mindset of doing the big climb?
No, I mean, basically it was just the constant practice, but the mental prep was just then thinking about the practice, imagining the experience, visualizing, you know, and not just visualizing the moves, but visualizing the emotional component of the moves, like how it will feel, you know, will it be scary to place your foot and to see, and then thinking through all the what ifs, you know, like really deeply visualizing it, so that when I was actually doing it, there wouldn't be any potential for, you know, second thoughts or, you know, doubts or anything to creep in. You know, basically the idea for me was to have experienced every possible thing already, so that when I was up there, you know, it all felt normal and natural.
Was there any improvisation at all once you got up there? Like I know that a lot of times sports people talk about like you train, and then once you get in the game, you have to forget all of that stuff.
That's a little different though, because that's like in sports where people are like punching you in the face and stuff. But the thing about climbing is that El Cap is pretty much always the same.
Yeah.
But no, I don't think there's improvisation. I mean, there was one spot down low on the route that's not even a point in the film, because it's, you know, it's just my own personal thing where I was like, this is really scary, but I kind of knew that it was going to be the scary move. I visualized it was like, this is going to be the spot where it's really scary, because I had to step down to this kind of blind foothold. But I did it 100% of the time. I knew it would be fine, and I got there and I was like, this is really scary, and I was just like, but who cares? And just did it, you know, and then climbed on fine. You know, there are things like that, but it's not really improvising. It's just kind of executing the plan, you know, which I guess is the opposite of improvising.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Hi, I'm sorry to ask this stupid question,
No
but
such thing. Let's hear it.
I wanted to know this for a while. So obviously your film was really popular, and but not everybody knows your name. So do people stop you in public and say, "Hey, aren't you Free Solo?"
Yeah.
It's almost Han Solo, which is
That's
pretty cool.
That's bad. The mic's back there. You guys want to just lead with the mics? Just give the mic to somebody, and we'll just, you know, it's all good. Just keep it going.
Do you ever get the Elvis leg?
Yeah. What do you mean Elvis like shaking legs if you get kind of scared, or sometimes if you're cramping on things? You know.
How does it? Do you have advice for how to? Obviously, it's an issue.
It depends a little. It depends on the cause, but you know, take some deep breaths, compose yourself. I mean, some people start to tremble a bit because they're actually sort of, you know, electrolyte imbalance, like cramping type stuff, like the end of a long day, and they're all starting to like tremble. So I mean, that you just need to work on your nutrition and hydration, you know, like figure out a plan. But if it's just because you're really scared, then I mean, there's not much you can do. Besides take some deep breaths, compose yourself, and kind of pull it back together.
Elvis Lake, Sabine.